But like your transport guys, they're chasing prisoners, they're all over, they're sleeping in hotels, this and that. Lose a gas receipt. You have 7 days, 10 days, 30 days to produce that receipt. You sign an agreement that says if I don't produce that receipt, I acknowledge that that will be put on my W-2 at the end of the year to be taxable income to me. End of story. But what's your next? We agree we need
So we're going to do that. So we're going to do that within a time period. Which,
and it would also need to say if I turn in the bill, like right now, one of the visa bills we're looking at to pay July 30th was due June 16th.
Right.
That's not our fault that that's
Right.
getting late charges and finance charges.
That's why it'll have the receipt.
And it's
When you get the bill, Ellen, you stamp it and say what day it was received, so
yes.
that there's no, if it's due June 16th and it comes into our office in July, there's no dispute on it. What's your next?
Okay. Next topic is that I have found that there is a contract employee. He is a Troy City police officer. He works for the juvenile division, overseeing, as I understand, he oversees the juveniles that have to do community service. We pay him an hourly salary. He is, I guess, set up as a contract employee. Although when I talked to Ernie Painter, he doesn't have a contract with this employee. And then when I checked also, this employee for the last 3 years has made more than $600. And I pulled up our 1099 reports out of the system for the last 3 years, and he did not get a 1099.
So we get a contract and give him a 1099.
So we need to make sure we get that done. And I just wanted to make sure you all were aware. I did email you, but I didn't know if all three of you saw the email. So, and then I think there's probably also we need to. And probably I will try to do, an audit to check and see if there's any other employees that have slipped through the cracks that way. And I don't have any explanation why that wasn't caught in any other audit. I don't remember it being pointed out in any other audit.
Right. If they didn't specifically target that area, they may not have caught it.
And then I need to ask you, where does the contract stand on the Oates contract for Linc?
The last I heard, you had an objection to it, and I told somebody, bring me a contract that will get certified and I'll sign it.
And I sent an email and asked Leah for assistance on that. I haven't heard, did not receive that email, or
You two need to put your heads together and get us a contract that you can live with.
on Oates. And I think it's just a matter of getting some wording in there because the contract goes into 2012, which hasn't been budgeted yet. There just needs to be some type of amendment like we did with the CenturyLink.
When you rescinded my email's been up in there
Before you bring it to us, though, make sure you send it to Oates because they may have some, because we're working off their standard sheet of music. We go adding things, they may say, we don't, so you're going to have to talk to Oates about this too.
And it would be the Oates contract and the contract with Community Opportunities. There needs to be some,
Right.
so I'll try to get with Leah, make sure we understand.
I thought that last week that was decided that was going to happen.
Tom?
If we could digress just for a minute, I had a question about the City of Troy police officer that it's on contract to the county. Does the work that he performs, does that fit the definition of being a contract person? Because generally the definition of a contract person is that they do things on their own accord without any direction. But if they're working for the county and they have to supervise juvenile offenders to do community service, they have to be at such and such a place at such and such a time. That violates one of the very tenets of being an independent contract person.
He could very well be an employee, is what you're saying.
Yes, yes.
Part-time employee.
Exactly, yeah. And so I would suggest maybe, before you go through the process of writing the contract, make sure that he meets the definition of an independent contract person as opposed to some other type of relationship with the county.
Surely, an independent contractor, he would have to say, okay, I will supervise kids on Saturday morning at 9, not Let's tell
Well,
you,
well,
you have to be there.
there's multiple tests. There's 7 criteria as to whether or not you're determined to be an employee, some other kind of relationship, or an independent contractor.
Okay.
Would that be something that if we could do a contract with just the city of Troy as a, say, consulting or outside labor sort of thing, and then the city of Troy would pay them, we would pay them a fee on a contract basis, whatever it is, and then the city of Troy would go ahead and W-2 that in? Is that something we could do?
Ernie
I don't.
Painter did tell me that they used to have it set up that way, that the county paid the city of Troy. The city requested that we change that because that got into the city having to pay that employee overtime.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
budgeting reasons.
So they need to
and things
actually be
that
a
they-
different W-2 employee here. So you would draw 2 W-2s.
That's right.
So it's only one employee that does it?
Ernie said there is another one, I didn't get his name, but I'll have to check.
Bev, do you have a question?
Matter of parliamentary procedure. Evidently, a couple of different things have been resolved which need to be resolved. You have to make a motion, have a second, and a decision in the record that these things were decided amicably today as far as policy, manual, policy, procedure, so on and so forth. You got into that yesterday, things that hadn't been done in January or whenever, where you needed a vote, a motion. My question is, does any of that come into play on the things that have been discussed and resolved today, as
No.
far as moving forward?
No, we don't. We're all in agreement that we're going to do the manual.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll save my comment. Okay, moving on to discussion about the budget. And I have, led my case about opening the budget, and I'm sure that's a dead horse because you've made your decision.
Could I make a comment about that before you go into that?
Okay.
This is regarding email you sent out last week to elected officials and other people. In the second paragraph, you said on July 12th, I discussed opening the budget, and after much rebuttal and discourse, it was decided that the notice would be put in the paper July 25th, and the budget hearing would be scheduled for August 8th. You're right, it was discussed. One of the scenarios or one of the possibilities that was brought up was that it could be put in the paper on the 25th and the hearing on the 8th. It was not decided to do that. There was no vote taken to do that. In fact, I can tell you for certainty there were at least 2 commissioners who were very opposed to that at the time. Had there even been a motion made, it wouldn't have gotten a second. So your statement about saying that later on in this email says Dan does not have the power or authority to make this decision, reversing a prior decision made by all 3 in an open meeting. I would agree, he doesn't have the power to override, but there was no decision made. So I would say that your information is incorrect there.
Okay,
I
I was-
understand why you would assume that was a decision,
That
but it
is,
wasn't
I
made.
guess, probably part of the reason for Bev's comment that she just made, and apparently, from now on, I have to take with a grain of salt anything that's just, that seems to be agreed upon by everyone and maybe communicated that way to me, but is not voted on and passed by motion. So I'll take that under advisement for the future, that not to, believe what I hear people telling me unless there's a vote and a motion and that it passes.
So-
Because in
so you
January, I was
understand-
told I was the security officer for the accounting system, but that didn't go through a vote. And in that meeting, it was decided that we would open the budget and put
No,
the...
it was not decided. It was not decided, that's my point.
You didn't vote on it, I was here, but you agreed reluctantly, and Rick went and got the calendar, and you guys figured out how long, why would you do all that when you didn't, I was here, Jim, I understand you guys don't vote, but just like with the security thing, you guys didn't vote her to be a security officer, but you approved the minutes. Now, I guarantee that's in the minutes if they were taken correctly, and you guys approved the minutes that was in there, that it was set up. Why do you guys, I don't understand that. And Bev's right. If you guys aren't gonna, if everything has to be voted on, we need to use parliamentary procedure, because we don't know. It's kind of like I'm chasing a cat's tail. I don't know what to follow. You say one thing, and then you guys change your mind.
No, we didn't know.
So from now on, I assume you guys need to vote on everything. So you need to vote on a credit card policy.
We did not agree to do that day. It was
Reluctantly,
discussed.
you didn't vote. You are correct. But you did agree, and Rick went and got the calendar, and you guys decided, and you had Kim write it down.
Okay, I'll
Now, if
speak
it's not in the
I'll
minutes.
speak for myself. No, I did not agree to that.
What day was that
On the
discussion?
12th of July.
I bet you weren't here because he went to get the
Okay,
calendar.
then don't accuse
Yeah.
me of taking those minutes.
Okay, Deanna, what's your next point?
I apologize.
Thank you.
Since we're going to kind of be doing things on a contingency basis until we open the budget in November, I have drafted an interim accounting policy. It's best practice to have an accounting policy, especially when you're dealing with grant monies. This is something auditors always look for, that there's a written accounting policy. I printed it off right before I came down here, and I probably left it on my, encased, left it sitting on my printer, so I don't have it to pass out to you. But my discussion was just gonna be that, you know, there are, because certain funds are gonna have to be spent out of different funds and budgets than what the money coming in is intended for. It's going to require a lot of extra tracking with the accounting and adjustments and adjusting journal entries will have to get done in November to move it to the right place after the budget gets set. And so my accounting policy outlines policies and procedures we're going to follow on that. So I'll be getting that to you. And I don't think we really even finished our oats conversation. I did need to ask one more question. On that, there's a separate checking account. And we had discussed that account getting closed so that we could bring it in under the treasury and put it on our records. And I did contact Steve Etcher about that and asked if he would send the checkbook here to us if you.
I have not, he has not sent that.
He hasn't sent that.
Do not have
I will have to get back with him. I also had some other questions with him regarding if there's any other funds that ever come in. Because I know he mentioned possibly they sell advertising on the buses, and if, I don't know if any of that's ever come in before, if that money went into that separate account also, or how that was
that. Or
done.
whether that went directly to Oaks.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's things that I need to settle and determine to get the account set up properly for that. It should be set up, in my opinion, as an agency fund. Those funds that come in from community opportunities and the Delta Center and advertising that are specifically earmarked for the Linc would be held in our treasury, and they would be held on our books as a liability, not an asset. And then as the bills to Oats are paid, it will come out of that fund and draw against that balance of that liability. And then also the county's allocation out of general revenue
Gets paid into.
is usually $45,000 a year. It will get paid also into that liability account, and then that balance will sit there and pay the bills for Oaks.
Do we have a fund or something that operates similar to that right now?
Not